Welcome back, everybody. So we have a distinguished panel of retail executives, a great variety of people, and we're going to chat today. Our title of the session is called The Future of Retail. I'll just introduce everybody real quick. So Michael Brodesky from Ralph Lauren, he's in the middle. Dr. Shankar, we're calling him Venki, from Texas A&M Center for Retailing Studies, and Shane DeStroters from Epicor Shop Visible on the end. Thanks to all of you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
So once again, the future of retail. And I know that's kind of a big subject. And we've talked a lot about the future of retail today in different capacities. So hopefully we're going to touch on some different aspects of it. We are going to talk about some interesting new technologies that may be on the horizon, but also what's realistic for us to be thinking about today. Because it's really fun to talk about, a lot of the cool stuff that may be, coming our way in 10 years or 20 years, or in retail it could be 30 years, when we're talking about things that are about to happen.
Or at least the adoption of it.
They're about to happen 30 years later. Oh yeah, we were talking about that 30 years ago. But we wanted to talk a little bit about what's going to be realistic as well. As Alicia has shared in some of the presentations earlier, please feel free to continue sharing your thoughts on Twitter. One of the thoughts I had earlier was that when we used to sit in conferences and do presentations or sit at tables and people were looking down at their phones, we thought, well, they're not paying attention. They're busy doing their email or not really paying attention to what we're talking about. But the fact is that we really appreciate the fact that you are paying attention because we can see it on our screen over there. So thank you for looking down at your screens and sharing some of your insights that you're collecting from our sessions today on Twitter. And keep it up. All right, so here we are again. So now you can recognize everyone. So this is our agenda, real quickly. We're going to be talking first about aligning future plans with customer expectations. And this is, of course, a theme that's been going on all day and at many of the conferences that we've all been to over the last year or 2 years. It's all about customer first. I mean, I heard that 20 or 30 times at a few of the conferences I attended recently in the last month. It's all about the customer first. But customer first has a lot of, as innovation does and as Omnichannel does, it has a lot of different definitions. So we're going to talk through that a little bit. Technologies on the horizons, and like I said before, what's realistic for today. We want to talk about some of the frontline challenges for retailers. And Michael specifically is going to share some of his insights on, okay, we want to do some of these things. What are the challenges that are holding some of us back versus others? And then we are, like I said, pleased to have Venki here with us today from the Texas A&M Center for Retailing Studies. I'm personally, fascinated to talk about, the future of retail from the perspective of what's going on in our universities. Are our students prepared to work in retail and also for retail companies like Epicor Shop Visible, for example? And so any thoughts or insights or questions that you have for Venki, please feel free to share or approach him afterwards. But it's important for all of us because it is our future. So the first part of the conversation is about, again, aligning plans with customer expectations, and a couple of the key focuses that I am highlighting here are personalization, which of course we've been talking about, and it's I guess the new omni-channel personalization today. Convenience is so important for our shoppers today, and interactivity. And just a couple of things that I highlighted here. One statistic from Infosys that says that almost a third of consumers are asking for their shopping experiences to be more personalized. So we're on our way there. We're getting there, but our consumers still are looking for more. And just the fact that just that fact that 1 million Apple Watches sold on the first day of pre-orders, and so the importance of wearables and new types of technology is certainly had a light shined on it recently. So this is a slide that Venki shared with us a little while ago, and I'm going to let him talk through this a little bit and fill us in a little bit on what you see as you said here, the scenario that's ahead of us.
Thanks, Debbie. And I'm an academic, so I have to come up with some big pictures, right? So this is idea in the same direction, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this also, is that when Debbie told us that we have to be talking about future of retail, one of the things that we do at the Center for Retail Studies at Texas A&M is we not only train graduates and undergraduates to go into retailing, but also we do a lot of research with a lot of companies. We have lots of member companies. Some of them are represented here, Neiman Marcus, GameStop, and Walmart, who are not here. But we get the opportunity to do a lot of research, look at the future, and see where firms are having difficulties, where customers are headed. We do a lot of studies on customer behavior. So this framework is based on our assessment of where we think we could see retail. There are two dimensions we think we could see retail in terms of. The horizontal dimension is some scenarios could be certain, some scenarios could be relatively uncertain. On the y-axis, we have the impact. What kind of impact can they create? Some scenarios could have a dramatic impact. It could completely disrupt life, disrupt businesses. Some scenarios could have a marginal impact. So if you have a low and high impact, and depending on that, we could put them into 4 boxes very quickly. What most of us are been talking the last couple of days is what the left bottom corner that we can see are low-hanging fruits. These are technologies that have been around for a while, and people, retailers and manufacturers and service providers are consistently using them, albeit in different levels. You have the RFID, kiosks, beacons, signage, and how many of you have heard of social proofing? Social proofing? Okay, let me talk a little bit about, okay, some of you have heard of social proofing. Okay, there may be some people who are already doing that as a business in here, right? Social proofing is nothing but using social media to help consumers and shoppers to give an authentication or some kind of an endorsement so that makes their purchases and their shopping much easier. So things such as, I have a lot of slides later on, but we're not going to talk about it in the interest of time. If you're interested, I'll be happy to share with you. So if things like, if you go to Amazon site, if it says 98% of the people choose this color, right? That's a very easy example of a social proofing. It tells you. Or you go to a restaurant and say, this is the most favorite item ordered in this, right? So these are kind of low-hanging fruits due to technologies. You can use all the social media and the crowdsourcing and so on. And what we've been hearing and talking all about is this. But however, if you look a bit further into the future and see, hey, what about things such as actually, which is very high probability, low uncertainty, but can have a high impact. For example, research from us is telling us that when we actually do research on certain things like advisor, concierge, these are things that you can use the mobile media, you can use the social media combination, or wearable technologies. When we actually advise customers, we heard some examples earlier on, then it actually improves your sales a multifold, sometimes double, sometimes triple, and so on. These are very high impact, however, it's not being realized. So these are some of the things that could be on the horizon, but more and more adopted by retailers as we go along. Then what we have is a lot of technological possibilities like Internet of Things, right? If you think about Internet of Things, your telephone talking to your refrigerator, talking to a garage opener, to every possible device on the planet. But how much of this are going to be really solving a pain for the customer? You know, people will say, oh, we have the technology now. If you're driving back from home, you can just say something to Siri. It'll just open up the garage door. It'll warm the coffee. It'll make the beer chill. Tack to your nest. All those things. You know, you go and do research, and the consumer, the shoppers come and say, I'm just a simple guy. I'm just going to come home and open the fridge and eat my beer or drink my beer, right? So, you know, all these Internet of Things, you still have to monetize and find a pain point to do this. That's why I put them as blind alley or mirage. A lot of people get excited, put a lot of investments. You may not see the payoff. And on the top right-hand corner, you have the game changer, which is really those very unpredictable scenarios, however, can have a potentially huge impact. These are disruptive innovations, business model innovations. For example, Amazon's anticipatory shipping. It's driven by artificial intelligence engines. In fact, AI could be the biggest game changer. Most of us, 10 years from now, we may not be able to even visualize right now what it might look like. You have driverless cars, we have concierge, we have to the power, so powerful that they could be 100 to 1,000 times as powerful as Siri. They could solve all our tasks, right? So those are the kind of things, that's one way to think about. Now, of course, there are a lot of you are here playing in one of these boxes or more of these boxes, and I'd love to hear from you. But this is one way to think about it. And for future, if you have to manage, we have to be able to try and keep our eyes on this and see which technologies are game changers or which developments are game changers and which developments are actually blind alleys. We can actually invest a lot but not get anywhere, and which are the low-hanging fruits that we want to monetize right away, which are the bonanzas that we are not identifying as yet, but we should be thereafter. So I'm going to stop here.
Okay.
How
Thank you.
long ago was beacons in the blind alley?
I don't know if it was even in the blind alley. It could have been, right?
Right.
So, Michael, what's your perspective then on these boxes from the ground level?
I actually disagree a little bit with the RFID.
Okay.
I think that's actually, it's a low-hanging fruit, but can have a really high impact because it can change how your omnichannel experience is, because a lot of retailers suffer with inventory inaccuracy in their stores and having bad customer experiences. So by moving that up, you can really try and sell through accurately all your inventory in your store.
Okay.
And there's a cost through your whole supply chain. Is where is this item? How am I going to find this item? You also see retailers like Macy's, Nordstrom's pushing brands to have RFID in their products to help solve this problem.
But it's been around for a very long time.
But the cost hasn't been driven down far enough that a brand can afford to put those labels in to make RFID successful. And I think you take RFID and you connect it to the Internet of Things and you get your washing machine talking to your clothes. How do I wash this? What are the right things to do? And really think about what are all the possibilities with RFID. But having a customer show up at your store and being able to find the last product that you have somewhere in the store because another customer took it and they left it somewhere, that's where the help comes in, and it removes a pain point.
Yeah, and even without RFID, the inventory visibility across the enterprise has been massive challenges just across the board. It's one of the biggest things that we hear of people struggling to go omnichannel is they can't get a hold of their inventory to exactly what you're saying. I'm selling it online, but someone in the store is actually walking around with it, especially when you get into apparel and you've got very, very thin SKU. It's really hard to do. You've got to have really trust, and that's what our RFID will bring to the table, where you know where it is within the store, as opposed to simply relying on the POS or the order management inventory to actually bring light to it. You know it's there.
Yeah. I think Beacon seems to be a very hyped, and now Facebook's giving them out free. Somebody else is doing advertising all over cities with them. But I think it's one of the more hyped technologies that really hasn't taken off. One of the things I thought beacons would lead to was department stores charging brands to advertise near beacons. So if you're in the shoe department and there's a shoe beacon, coming up with some kind of ad network in store where I would have to bid against other shoe companies for advertising or doing promotions in store to somebody. But we haven't seen, we've seen a lot of press releases, but we haven't seen a lot of, beacons really becoming an amazing thing.
But in one area where beacon is actually effective is, I know Swirl Technologies here, you could talk to them. But one project we're doing with GameStop is that we're trying to use the loyalty data along with beacon, along with mobile data, apps data.
Right.
And if you integrate all of them, you get a very powerful view of the customer.
Yep.
And that could be leveraged very well for
Right.
personalization. And we heard a lot about personalization, and that's where this could be very, very
We
useful.
were actually talking about that a little bit. Rafi from GameStop was on our group on the store tours yesterday, and we were talking about it's that, do we want to be creepy versus how to best use this kind of new technology?
Right, yeah.
And that's one of the things that Rafi was saying about about their beacon testing is that they tied it directly to the loyalty program. That's how they wanted to get it started, because they're really unsure about, they don't want to really cross that line, that creepy line.
Right. Yeah, and I think that, you know, in a store with a footprint the size of GameStop, that's possible. When you get into big department stores, the amount of beacons and coverage you need, it becomes really cost prohibitive for a lot of retailers to even think about testing it at that level, because now you are talking about push technology. That means I need to have something on my phone, some sort of app to receive it. So now I've got individual apps from, you know, dozens of retailers on my phone. So you start to get into there where it's not really universal technology. The technology framework is, but you're now talking individual experiences through hooking up to clienteling or something like that, where you're pulling the CRM data back into it.
I mean, I think it's interesting, but it's not, at least for us, it's not the hot item. Using Wi-Fi and doing location-based with Wi-Fi in store can be successful if you have a good Wi-Fi network, which I know as a retailer, you know, if I go through our 60 stores, every store is different in the capabilities with Wi-Fi.
Depending on
and
how old the building might be. Or,
That's right.
Where
old buildings.
How thick the walls are.
Right.
Yeah.
But one of the things you can do with beacons or the Wi-Fi is getting a salesperson to a customer. And if you know all your salespeople's MAC IDs, and you know where your customers are, and you know that no one's near them, you can alert a customer service person, a concierge person, to go to that area and help the customer out. And you know, if you're in the women's section, you can send over a person who's a women's expert.
Great. Let's see what's on the next slide. So, and I think we talked a little bit about this, you know, the Internet of Things and wearables, and we've heard, you know, about all of this also in some of our other presentations today. So, you know, just a quick look at from some information from, this was from Salesforce. There's expected to be 75 billion connected devices by 2020. So, I mean, is there anything more that, Shane, I guess we can start with you, that you're thinking about in terms of, you know, how this is going to impact what retailers are doing or what you're doing with retailers?
I mean, I think it changes the customer experience. Obviously, the more data I have, the more unique experiences I can serve up, no matter what the channel is that I'm talking to them. So again, stuff that's, you know, there today, you get into endless aisle clienteling, sharing wish lists, shopping carts, from, you know, web to POS to devices. You're seeing much more web experiences brought down to the store, touch screens, you know, skin tone finders, things like that, that normally would have been pure online being bled together. You do get to the point of a little bit of data overload of what are you going to do with the data. Can you really serve up that many unique experiences based off of what I know about the consumer themselves? You know, you go back to just the marketing side of the house. If I just take the most generic example, you know, do I like red sweaters or do I like blue sweaters? Fine, I can do a 50-50 split. You get to the point where I like off-white. Are you going to make 9,000 variations of the same thing? Most retailers can't keep up with the content marketing side of it. You're going to run into the same situation when you get into really trying to serve up unique experiences down to the store level or the web experience level with just what the data you have and what's the most effective way to utilize that data to the customer. And a little bit of what we talked about, does it get to the point where it's too much information, now it's not usable anymore?
I guess I take a different perspective, which is in the clothes and apparel space, is how are we integrating into our clothes? What are the things that we're doing where, you know, you have a wearable shirt that's doing heart rate monitoring, it's connecting to your iWatch, it's connecting to your phones, it's connecting to, you know, if you're a person who has a heart rate monitor, how are your clothes being used to connect with these other things to help a health provider or your trainer or things like that? How are your clothes interacting, or your code or things like that interacting with other pieces of technology that you're using?
And so, how viable are those things in the near term, or what, you know, what's the kind of timeline do you see for that?
I know not to do any PR, but I know we have a product coming out in the next year,
Okay, good.
which is a tech shirt that we had at the U.S. Open, and you could see like the heart rate of people running around at the U.S. Open for the ball boys. So Levi's made an announcement where they're doing thread, this special conductive thread in some of their products to try that out with Google. So I think you will start seeing an evolution of this. You know, Nike or somebody will probably have some type of connected, you know, instead of having a Fitbit, your shirt, your clothes will actually be what is monitoring you, and you will no longer need a wearable device to follow your steps, to follow how many calories you're losing.
Yeah, and the big industry that's coming out of that is now the data and accessibility to that data. Who owns that data? How does that data utilized? That's the next evolution. Is, do I take that data and then is Google selling it all back to the insurance providers? That data model is becoming a huge business on the back end.
And you could imagine, you know, senior citizens, you know, now there's like remote help for them, or nurses, or things like that, where someone, you see like their heart rate starts to fluctuate, and that gets passed through from their clothes, from a watch, over to a hospital or something.
But that's a serious consideration for retailers as far as the data goes, and
Yeah,
you know, how are you going to manage that, the privacy issues, the data security, and then, you know, just the overall creepiness.
Yeah, because now you're not talking about just generic profile data. Now you're
Right.
talking about, you know, real personal, you know, not just PII. You're starting to get into HIPAA. You're starting to get into, you know, completely different areas that are typically not in the retailer's world, and they're not used to storing data at that level. You know, PCI, yes, but this is well beyond PCI at this point.
And you would need a company large enough to drive a sort of, you know, like a home kit or a health kit or a clothes kit from Apple, where, you know, they had the integrated clothes interface and really drive a standard for the industry.
So it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Yep.
Well, you're talking about the different types of technology. I kind of borrowed this from an Epicor presentation that Epicor did at their event, and I just thought it was cool. And I wonder if any of you have any guesses about what all these products have in common. Anyone? Were you at the Epicor event? Okay. Yeah, they were all produced by 3D printing. I don't know, Shane, if you want to talk a little bit about what, you know, the conversation you had around that, but I just thought it was cool.
No, I actually wasn't in this presentation.
Okay.
I had to coincide one on the other side of it.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts, Michael, on, you know, the whole 3D printing scenario? I still don't get it personally.
Maybe not such, maybe not exactly the 3D printing, but the ability to have a piece of machinery in your store and custom make a product for a customer. So not the typical 3D printing, but with the shoes, I think New Balance, you can go down there, get measured in the city, and they will create a shoe for you on the spot. Men's Warehouse has tailors in the basement, but, you know, being able to go into a store and have them measure you, and then, you know, you come back an hour later, and you have something for you. You know, is there a flip-flop machine in Ralph Lauren's future? I don't know, but that is, you know, that's something that you can use as a novelty to draw people in. It may not be, but the speed is always, you know, the issue, right? Each of these devices could take hours to make that product. It's a custom product. It's in the store, but if it's not fast, the customers don't want it.
So this addresses two of the three topics earlier, the convenience and the personalization.
But not the timeliness.
I mean, not the convenience, but the personalization and the interactivity, I should say, but not necessarily the convenience based on the timing.
Right. And also, you know, some of the materials don't last very long, so there's a quality issue as well. It works for pizza.
Yeah.
You know, it's short shelf life.
I'm still trying to figure that one
Michael,
out.
this goes back to a very simple idea of mass customization, which used to exist before bicycles and so on were made mass customization. Yesterday, I was with a bunch of people at Oakley's, and they are making, you know, personalized glasses, but only if it conforms to 4 or 5 things. But those kind of things, there's a value proposition. You mentioned shoe. Nordstrom has this, that you could go there. I think they have partnered with at the new company that I've acquired, an Australian retailer. And I think those are now very common. It's probably low-hanging fruit, but as you rightly said, there's a limit to that, you know.
Right.
There's only a segment of all the population you will be able to address, and that won't cover the entire business.
Right, and I think some of it is, you know, when you think of a company like Shapeways, who does the 3D printing where you upload something, the idea that, you know, you could turn your Kinko's or FedEx locations into a 3D printing place where you put the shoe and then, you know, they're making
But one area I think this has a lot of potential is co-creation with the customer. So when you said speed is not an issue, imagine scenarios where customers actually would love to spend time, create the product, because they enjoy. That's an experience. They derive benefits out of that.
So instead of the pottery painting,
yeah, like Potter painting,
studios,
Build-A-Bear, those are the kind of
book
places
club,
where
all the
3D
things that
printing will be
retailers are
very
doing
useful.
The
to
3D
drag it
printing
in.
club, which
Yeah.
I haven't seen yet, but that's similar
Coming.
to Shapeways, except they're not having stores where you go in. It's a community built around 3D printing and a marketplace where you can upload stuff and sell it to other people. A lot of people seem to upload it themselves and buy their own products, but it's that similar idea. But like if you look at Men's Warehouse, you can walk in, get a custom suit in less than a week, or 2 days later, they're sending it to you, they're making it in Massachusetts, and you get it. And I think people want that experience, or they want that personalized product.
30 years ago, this used to happen in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Hong Kong tailors used to custom tailor you within 24 hours. And if you're on rush, they can even do it within 8 hours. Okay? So it's not like it was never there
Yep.
before. It's just that technology has made some of these things much more easier, scalable.
So, Michael, can you just talk to us a little bit about, and again, we're using the word omnichannel. That's, a little bit of a pariah, especially in my vocabulary, because we say it so often. But, what are some of the challenges that retailers are facing when they're thinking about some of these new technologies and, the whole issue of omnichannel?
Yeah. So on omnichannel, I think when you have new retailers like a Warby Parker or somebody who was online and going to a store, where you have one P&L. You don't have competition between your customers online and in store versus people who have been around for 30 years, where you have a store P&L, you have an online P&L, you have a wholesale P&L, each of those competing, and your store people don't share their customer list with the online customers. Online people don't share with the stores. You have customers in the same area, and you're both marketing to them. All of these things block good omni-channel experiences. And one of the things, we talk about buy online, pick up in store, but how many sites on their website are promoting store events? When do you go to a site and it says, come into our store, Father's Day is tomorrow, you need a last minute gift, come into the store, because you can't ship it to them. But those things aren't really happening. Companies that have the multiple P&Ls are not really being efficient in this experience. Lots of companies have siloed inventory. The store has a merchant team, a planning team. They buy one set of inventory. The online division buys another set of inventory. You have two warehouses, or you have a warehouse and you're co-locating inventory in the warehouse. And then your online customer comes and buys stuff, but it hits 2 inventory pools, and now you're shipping 2 boxes to the customer. All of these things, like we as retailers create, but we're not putting, it really takes a top decision to break down that barrier. And the new retailers, like a Bonobos, a Warbly, people who started in one area and now are flowing and adding stores to get customers in, they don't have these barriers, and they're going to be able to move a lot faster to give great experiences. And going back to, what do customers expect? Customers expect that wherever I touch you, I have availability. It's seamless, frictionless experiences, but yet, if you came into our store and you bought something online, you walk in and you ask for a return, well, the person's going to sit there and say, I have no visibility into that order. So who are the people who are sort of leading this, where no matter where you touch, between a legacy POS, an online system, wholesale systems, where are you going to get that great experience to sort of make everything frictionless and visible?
Yeah, and I think, and you hit on the 2 big ones. It's the technology overhead that you already have in place with existing retailers that is real. It doesn't go away. I mean, when you get into the omnichannel world, am I doing multiple credit card swipes? What does the receipting look like? Can I buy anywhere, return anywhere? That's hard to do when you're dealing with legacy. If we had a clean slate, all this technology exists, it's pretty straightforward. But when you're retrofitting, it becomes very hard to do. And then the other point, which is 100% correct, a lot of organizations now have a role which is basically VP of customer, where it breaks down all the barriers. They don't care about channels, they don't care about attribution models, that's not what they're looking at. They're solely looking at what is best for the customer, and then starting to put together in place. You then, of course, need to bring that in from your store ops people, your online people, to break down those barriers, down those walls, and come up with, how are we going to do attribution? Is it, where the order was taken, where it's delivered from? Did we split? Did we double comp? What does that look like? That all needs to get figured out, but you need someone at the top who's basically doesn't have a horse in the race as far as doing what's right across the organization.
And it's hard, because I've asked that question in the room, and you're basically telling someone sitting there that they're going to lose their job.
Yes.
Or a group of people that they're no longer needed because you're combining organizations.
Yep.
And stores don't share data with online, and online doesn't share data with stores. Or you have orders that come in, that you want personalized, and your stores can't personalize it, but that's where all the inventory is. And then how do you get that, can you get that inventory shifted over to your e-com? Or how do you convert it for your e-com?
And when you don't have that structure, it becomes really hard, because you have your store operations solutions, which is like your merch, your POS, that side of the house, and you have your online, which is your e-commerce. Then you end up with this OMS that's in the middle, and who really owns it, which is really making all of this happen across the board. And that's a big struggle for organizations across the board.
Yeah.
One place Shop Visible, similar companies to them, I think are going to enable over the next year to 2 years is the concept for a brand where you come on my site, where you go to any of the brand site, North Face, for example, and you go there and you say, I want this. And they're going to show you availability in a Nordstrom's, in a Macy's. They're going to show it to you any retailer that has that product near them, not just their own stores. And if you want to do buy online, pick up in store, you'll go to their site, you'll do the buy, and then you'll pick it up in another retailer's store. Because they want to keep the customer and they want to do the conversion, but really we haven't bridged that gap of who also owns the customer. So in that scenario, does the place that's fulfilling own the customer, or does the place that's selling it own the customer? But I think this is one of those barriers, that maybe not everybody thinks about in omnichannel, but that needs to get solved.
Yeah, and especially for brands, because you want to lock them into that sale. I don't want to drop them on, say, a Macy's site, and then I'm going to put, this shirt right next to all my competitors' shirt across the board. Capture the sale, send it down. All of that from a technology standpoint is available today, right? It's just inventory visibility outside of your enterprise, looking across. And then again, this is just existing technology, but it's a mindset shift.
Yeah. And I think this goes to the buy anywhere buttons, right? One of the things we talk about a lot is everywhere there's going to be a buy button to your product. It's going to be on Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, Google, everywhere, right? You can go on Google now and search for Home Depot something, and you get results of a store near you with inventory availability. So when you have the buy anywhere button, that whatever is enabling that purchase on Pinterest for the brand's product somewhere else, you can enable that yourself on your own site. How you work out who gets paid and all of that, that's a different problem.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an ongoing conversation that's going to continue.
And it's not really solved.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, obviously, yeah. And we've all been talking, we've been talking about it a long time now, and it's still, it continues to be a challenge.
We just keep changing the name of it.
So this is what we didn't get to talk about today, and we are going to have to wrap up. We're running out of time. I'm sad because I like this topic, and I know you're sad about it. But I wish we had more time. But we'll share your contact information with everyone if anyone wants to reach out to you, Benki, and have that conversation. And I'm sad we didn't get to talk about Linus. But and we don't have time for questions. But I want to thank all of you guys. We're actually moving on to innovation labs. We have our 2 sets of innovation labs. If you need any help figuring out where you're going for your first innovation lab, please see one of our staff members. And the innovation labs are the pink rooms, 201, 203, 205, 206. So they're all nearby each other. Once again, I want to thank our panelists. And sorry we had to interrupt the conversation. We could probably sit here all afternoon talking about some of these things. And thanks to all of you. So please enjoy your innovation labs. Come back for Adam Silverman, our closing keynote. It's not to be missed. It's going to be a great closing session. And thanks again to all of you for being with us here today.
Thanks.
Thank you.